two-dimensional analog, the trampoline being the analog of the kind of warping of four-dimensional space-time around a mass, all right? So if you can imagine an infinite number of trampoline surfaces all being warped by that bowling ball, that's the effect that a mass has on space-time. So let's use our trampoline surface and try to reproduce the capture model of the moon, okay? So let's take a ping pong ball or a softball, something smaller than the bowling ball, and roll it toward the bowling ball at a certain velocity. Now what happens? Well, if you roll it slow enough, that softball is going to be captured by the bowling ball's gravity. And the orbit that it's going to take place around that bowling ball is going to be elliptical, all right? And as the softball approaches the bowling ball, it's going to accelerate. And that acceleration is going to be what produces that elliptical orbit, all right? Now, let's look at the moon, okay? If we look at the moon, the problem is that the thing is orbiting in almost a perfectly circular orbit. And in order for that to happen, in other words, instead of accelerating as it approaches the Earth, somebody has to be putting on the brakes. Okay? That's literally what you have to be doing. And in order to park it even more so into the position where only 60% of its surface is visible, and the same 60% of its surface, incidentally, is visible as it orbits on its own axis from the Earth's surface, that's even more difficult. So in other words, do the math here. Compute all the statistics of this happening just by chance. Number one, the physics of the capture model doesn't work. Someone put on the brakes. Now, what I'm telling you is it doesn't matter whether the moon itself is artificial or not. The problem is its orbit is. Okay? And if the orbit's artificial, then yeah, people ask me, have you ever seen a UFO? And I say, yeah, every time there's a full moon. There it is. You know, there's really no other good way of putting it. And you know, science has all sorts of ways of explaining all of this away, you know, because God forbid that we should really accept what the science is telling us, and that is someone parked it there. Quite literally.
Okay, well, if that's the case, what do you think is its purpose?
Excellent idea. I have no idea. It could be as a natural defense barrier around the Earth, because let's face it, the moon absorbs an awful lot of punishment for us. It could be that. It could have been that it was used as some sort of base by whoever parked it there. I don't know. I have no idea. I think you have to entertain all possibilities. Once you really accept what the science and the physics is telling you about it, once you accept that, I think you have to accept all the possibilities and leave all of them open until you can get up there and find out just the heck what it is and what may be up there.
Well, NASA sent satellites up to the moon. They sent people up to the moon. What do you think is running NASA?
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. I tend to the view of Richard Hoagland and Mike Barra that there is some sort of covert group that's in charge of it. I do agree with them that at one point it looked like the Nazis were the most influential. At this point in time, I don't think that they are. It's somebody else, but who it is, I don't know. But I don't think that NASA is the friendly civilian space agency that we've all been told it is. I think that it's a cover. I do think that all the indications are that the United States has its own version of this breakaway civilization and has come up with some of these technologies. I think probably other nations have too. I think the Europeans have done so. I think certainly the Russians have done so. So I think you're looking at the possibility of several breakaway civilizations here, and they may or may not be in league with each other. They may or may not be at war with each other.
Okay, well, Thank you for your answer.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I believe the next question is from Alton. No, that's for me. Okay. Next question is from myself, and I believe this might be from Cliff. What is your opinion of chemtrails, and what about Antarctica? The whole no-fly zone layer of secrecy over the South Pole. Joseph?
Well, chemtrails, again, are not a subject I've researched, so I really can't comment on them. I don't know that much about them. I have seen very unusual phenomenon with my own eyes in the skies where I used to live that clearly were the signature of some sort of technology, but I simply have not researched chemtrails to have any sort of informed opinion about them. Antarctica, on the other hand, I strongly suspect that, in spite of what I said earlier about the post-war Nazis having a research base there, I do think they had something there. I do think that there is enough extremely suspicious activity going on down there vis-a-vis Lake Vostok and the Russians and more recent reports of strange maladies coming out of there. Something is going on there, and I add to that one final point, and that is that in Roswell and the Reich, at the very end of the book, I put out seismograms that were recorded by a German researcher that were taken in Antarctica, and I was astounded when I saw these things, because if they're legitimate, if they're genuine, then we're looking at enormous low-frequency wave activity spanning hours of activity that are not anything close to any sort of normal seismic activity. And so I'm left with one of two hypotheses, and this may be the explanation as to why there's a no-fly zone down there. I don't know. The one possibility is that we are looking at a wholly new phenomenon of geophysical activity, and there are no good models that the scientists have to explain it, or we are looking at the product of some human technology. The reason I mention that possibility is if you are testing some sort of geophysical technology, the perfect place to do so, where you would have very little effect on a human population and you would still be able to observe tectonic activity, surface activity, and so on, the perfect place would be Antarctica. And the way that you would observe it would be precisely from the air or by satellite. So that, to my mind, may be the most plausible explanation as to why there's a no-fly zone there.
Hi, Joseph. This is Lolly.
Hi, Lolly.
This next question is actually from Alton, who's been dropping in and out due to some storms in his part of the country.
Uh-huh.
So I'll ask it on his behalf.
Uh-huh.
He would like to know, he says, many consider HARP and similar projects of other governments around the world to be tools of domination and destruction, much as nuclear bombs were in the 20th century.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on HARP?
Well, I have to agree. I just posted a paper on how HARP-like technologies, and the paper was based actually upon the research of a Brazilian physicist. The technologies that these ionospheric heaters represent are technologies that you can model, and this is the important point. You can model a theoretical application or use for these technologies in precisely creating earthquakes and, for that matter, creating cyclonic activity. In other words, areas of low pressure that you can steer weather systems by this means. So, are they a technology of domination? I think so. I've always found it very suspicious that the Soviet Union experienced a raft of very devastating earthquakes in the weeks leading up to German reunification. And at that time in history, Germany did have its its hands on a HARP-like technology, ESCAT, in northern Norway, but it's predominantly a German-run project. So you have Germany with access to this type of technology, the United States, Japan has its own version, Russia certainly has its own version, and Brazil has been working in this area as well. So you've got, I think you have here a new technology. I think it's even deadlier than nuclear bombs in a certain sense because it can produce the same amount of energy output as a nuclear bomb. In fact, if you take the argument that the Japan earthquake was a product of a technology, well, a 9.1 on the Richter scale is far, far larger in terms of energy output than the largest hydrogen bomb that was ever detonated, which was detonated by the Soviet Union. So yes, this technology is very scary, and like I said before, the problem with it is Mother Nature provides you with perfect plausible deniability. The only people that are going to know that they're in a shooting war with this technology are people that have the technology and have developed the means to detect that technology being used by somebody else. The rest of us, they're not talking to.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
I have one more question from Alton.
Uh-huh.
Given your educational background, how do you view the electric universe theory from the perspective of the Christian Bible?
Well, number one, I'm in favor of the electric universe theory. In other words, the plasma cosmology of Hannes Alfvén and Anthony Peratt and some others that have written about this type of cosmology. I do like that cosmology immensely because it's much, in my opinion, the explanatory power of it is much greater than the standard physics model, which comes out of an elaboration of the implications of general relativity. But I do not, and have never in my books, attempted to allow any one ancient textual tradition, including the biblical, to steer my research. My academic background in it is one thing. My adherence and commitment to it is very, very far from what people might think. I do not consider myself an adherent of that school. So to me, it's one of many ancient textual traditions that provides some clues, but I do not use it as a canon or standard by which to judge all the rest.
Okay, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Lolly. Joseph, we only have about 5-6 questions left, so we'll make a quick 2-minute break, and then we'll be back and wrap it up.
All right. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm having fun. Good questions.
We had a lot more, but...
Good answers.
I hope so. I hope so.
Did you say you come back, Joseph?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Oh, great.
Okay, we're here with Joseph Farrell. His website is geezerdeathstar.com. Please pay for his dinner and donate at geezerdeathstar.com. The next question we have is from Patrick.
Yes, Dr. Farrell, your discussions often suggest that physical alchemy, the transmutation of materials,